Some of us may have been fortunate enough to be abducted by aliens. So let's talk about alien abductions and indie sci-fi. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am fortunate enough to get a peek at an indie sci-fi film called Proximity, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. I have the writer-director here, Eric Demeusy. Eric, hey, welcome to the Film Threat Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, good to talk to you too.
Now, I know that, like, first of all, if you don't know anything about this movie Proximity, you should check out the trailer. It's coming out from Shout Factory in mid-May. It looks epic. It's I'm sure you don't mind me gushing for a little bit about the film. It feels like a throwback to the kind of sci-fi movie I grew up watching and loving as a kid. There's definitely shades of like 80s Spielberg in there. The score is incredible. Love to talk to you about the music. The special effects combined with this really amazing cast. I cannot believe you made a movie of this scale for a low budget. So first of all, what led to this? You worked in visual effects before, so what are some of your previous credits you can talk about? What led to getting Proximity made?
Yeah, so my background is in animation and visual effects. For the last probably 10 years, I've been doing full-time title sequences and stuff for movies and TV shows. Most recently, probably the most well-known is Stranger Things, and worked on like some Marvel, Jessica Jones, and just various title sequences and animation. But in that time, while I was doing it, filmmaking was always kind of at the forefront, and I was doing short films and submitting them to festivals during that time, and then trying to find a project that would allow me to just go out and make it with not a lot of resources, especially for your first movie. That's typically what you have to do. And so when the idea for Proximity came up, and I knew that, I could use my background with visual effects to apply it to the storytelling of this. And it was even though it is science fiction and it's kind of got this, like alien abduction thing going on with it, it is still a grounded sci-fi, and so there's a lot of focus on the characters and the story, and so it just felt like the perfect project to jump into for something that we would be able to achieve with not a lot of resources.
It's amazing because you look at this film and there's no reason you could look at this movie as like, oh, this is sort of the tone of it. I think kind of feels like, I don't mean to say it's like set in the 80s, but the tone of it kind of feels a bit like that sort of that sense of wonderment, right, over aliens, and the music I think really puts you in that mood too, and also just the actors that you chose. What's it, Ryan Mason and I want to say Heidi Kwan.
Ryan Mason and Heidi Kwan.
Oh my God, they really keep it grounded in a reality, which I think really just adds to the whole thing. But and I like to say that, like, no good special effects is one thing, right? Which the film excels at that, but the people who sell it are the actors. So you really just won with those actors. So then how did you? I mean, Stranger Things, and also bravo, because that title sequence has been parodied. It's been, it's so I don't know. I'm a fan of title sequences too for movies. Cronenberg's title sequences tend to be minimalist, but I had a conversation with him about his title sequences, and I love when a director pays attention to those kinds of things. So coming from that, there's clearly a reason why the quality level of so many aspects of the film are so high. It's because you've lived in other realms. I get these aren't questions, these are comments, but how then did it lead to getting you got all these pieces of the puzzle? How did you pull it together? And not like you want to say exactly what the budget was, but it just feels like a big summer movie. I know it's coming out on VOD and whatnot, because every movie's coming out on VOD now, right? It's a level playing field. You're playing on Yeah, technically speaking, you know, they would brag about, oh, this movie's on 3,000 screens. Hey, this movie is going to be on millions of screens at home. But what led to like putting the pieces of the puzzle of the project together? Because we have a lot of indie filmmakers who listen to the Film Threat podcast. I like to give them some insight into getting where you are at this moment. So I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, like I said, you know, I was trying to find a project that I was developing another project before this, and it was just the budget and the scale of it kept putting this barrier in front of me of trying to be able to just go out and make it. I needed somebody to like give me permission or to give budget to go do it. And so with this, our whole motto about it was like breaking down the wall. So what was the problem with the other one? It was the budget. That was what was in front of us. So it was like, all right, well, let's make something that we can fund ourselves or just go out and shoot. And so that was the approach to it, was that we would just, in fact, we had shot a short film over the course of 2 days that we just went around, and it was like handheld, found footage kind of style. And we shot for 2 days, put it together. And it was like such a freeing process when you come from like the way that typically you have to do production in LA to just like going back to like what you did in high school and just like going out and shooting stuff. So it was like, maybe we can put a story together this way where we kind of improvise it, where we'd shoot like for 2 days, we'd put it together, and then we'd figure out like what the next part of the story was and continue to build on it. And then I thought that's a really cool way to make a movie, but maybe I should actually put the whole story together. That way we don't back ourselves into a corner at the very end, and we can only take like 2 doors to end it with. So I wrote the script and then used that as like the blueprints. And then we were trying to get funding just to shoot like a scene of the movie, like a 10-minute, 15-minute chunk of the movie. And we did a Kickstarter for that, actually, thinking that maybe we'll be able to at least get a little bit to start with. And then that ended up attracting some investors to do the whole entire movie. And then once that happened, we'd still shot that little piece, but I didn't even start on post-production. I just went right into pre-production for the rest of the movie. And then from there we had the funding that we needed and the backing that we needed to do the rest of the movie still at a really small budget, but it allowed us to complete the whole thing.
It's interesting. You started this with a Kickstarter. I mean, just a Kickstarter to do a short, you said, right?
Yeah, we were going to do like it was going to kind of be able to stand on its own as a short, but it was a scene from the movie. So we picked it was from the beginning of, I think it was the end of the first act. So it kind of felt like it could be its own little story in its own way. And then use that as sort of, as a piece that would maybe help us get the rest of the funding.
Well, I mean, I just look at this movie and, okay, if this, coming from a studio, I look at this movie and I think, okay, this is like a 20, 30, $40 million, maybe more movie. Just because of the quality of the effects, the music, the cast, number of locations, the fact that like, yes, there are aliens in it. I hope that's not a spoiler, but there's even more than aliens. There are other things going on. I don't want to spoil too much. You should watch the trailer. You should watch the trailer for Proximity, and check it out to at least get a taste of it. But if you did one of those things, let's say you did spaceships, that's one thing, but you also did spaceships, aliens, and then other elements of the film that I don't want to give away too much that are also, each one is a cost. How do you decide an approach when you're like, we're going to realize these aliens, we're going to do spaceships this way? What goes into the thinking process to actually realize that and do it on a budget that is currently undisclosed? It's as secretive as other elements of the film, but how do you pull that together? Well, so one of the things was in the movie, we get into a little bit more of like the sci-fi elements, and that was a chance for us to design certain aspects of the movie. And if I had the budget, a bigger budget, I probably would have built a lot of the sets and a lot of the locations on a stage. That way we could have controlled the design more. But what I decided to do early on was to embrace real locations. So we shot on
real locations as much as we possibly could to save cost. And we used a lot of natural lighting. In part of the movie, the characters are in Costa Rica, and we shot that with, I think we had 3 people in our crew, including myself, and then our 3 actors. And we went down there with just the camera and 2 lenses, no lighting equipment, no tripod, just the shoulder rig, and shot handheld when we were there. And the other thing is, we don't really have any extras in the movie either. So it's just trying to get real locations. We have the script, bringing the actors into that environment, and then letting the scene play out and finding the best angles. Another thing is I didn't have a shot list. So when we'd show up in these places, I would not be locked into one way of shooting it. I would be able to look at the location and then kind of know exactly what needed to be covered in the scene, and then find the ways to cover the scene based on what the location looked like. So we were able to be flexible with that. I think location was one of the ways to help save costs for us.
Well, save costs, but also it increases the production value. I mean, it makes the movie look bigger than it is, for sure. Now I noticed in the background you have a THX 1138 poster. Is that right? I love that film. I saw it when I was young. It kind of blew my mind. It's kind of Brave New World aspects. It was early George Lucas, which, practical effects and just amazing stuff. There's an aspect of the film that's kind of influenced by THX 1138. Can you talk about that a little bit, or would you mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
oh shoot,
just because the visuals in it are just, they're so new and groundbreaking. It's like there's no other movie that looks like that. And but George Lucas had a similar approach to shooting that movie in a documentary style. He talked a lot about also shooting in real locations, and so that was the thing, is there are certain elements in the movie that obviously I have all kinds of influences. There's a lot of different movies that inspire me that I love, and so those all end up kind of making their way into your own work in some way, because it's something that you've seen so much and that you're so influenced by. But with certain aspects of the movie, when it's like, if a location, we plan on one type of location, and then a different location popped up that we could have for free or for cheap, then we would embrace that. And then there's certain elements that you've seen in the trailer, like the white room, for instance. Like, that was in the script supposed to be more of like a contained kind of white hospital room, and you would be able to see where the walls were and stuff. But we had the stage open up to us, and I couldn't help but think about THX 1138 and the scenes where they're being confined into this like white void. And so we just embraced that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that sort of cross over, different influences. And I think also with the android characters that are in the movie that you can see in the trailer, when thinking about the design of that, also just on a low budget, having to do that practically somehow, thinking about what the characters would be like, what they would look like. And I always kept thinking about like police officers, and like the threat that like the authority would have, that it's like, it always is like this intimidating factor. And that's kind of what those characters are like in the movie. And in THX 1138, same thing with the characters that are like the one in this poster here. They're like these authority figures that are supposed to keep everybody, under this certain rule of law. And so naturally, I think some of that stuff kind of crept in there.
Yeah, I love seeing all the influences, because it's all the things that I love. Everything. It's in a way, Stranger Things, which you did the title sequence for, is kind of like an ode to that as well. I mean, this, you're taking in aliens, a little bit of THX, and grounding it in reality. I do love that your lead character is actually a scientist who works at JPL in Pasadena. I'm in Pasadena, so love this town.
Yeah. I actually had a consultant there. I reached out to JPL and asked, when writing the script, I actually went there and toured the campus and took tons of pictures and like documented the whole inside of it and asked a bunch of questions. Like there's a lot of scenarios in the movie that I wanted to make sure that the lead character and the characters that work at JPL, that was also grounded in the things that they do with the satellites and there's like this game that the main character plays with one of his friends that he works with and sending these signals out. And I was asking them about, realistic ways that this would be possible for them. But then also just seeing like what kind of rooms that the engineers work in. And, you think about just a science lab in general, you're thinking about like lab coats and stuff, but it looks like a garage. Some of the places that they're working in, there's just like these workbenches with like soldering irons and all kinds of like microchips laying around. And so, yeah, that was and I'm fascinated with NASA and space. So it was really cool to go check that place out.
Me too. I'm fascinated with NASA, have been since I was a kid. I've even got like a Saturn V model rocket back here as part of my collection, which
Nice.
You can only see a portion of, but I've done that JPL tour, which is fascinating. One of the best parts of the tour that I found incredible. Did you go to the part where they're assembling ships, probes and whatnot, and it's in this room, so you can actually sit in, it's almost like you're like one of those like operating theaters. So you're up top in these chairs and you look down and everybody's all masked up and
that's where they have all of the all the suits so that they don't accidentally electrically shock certain things. And
right.
Yeah, I went into that room. It's very cool. That's where they're building like all the rovers and stuff like that.
It's amazing. The fun fact I learned on that tour was that they build 2 of everything. So when they send a probe out, they have a second exact duplicate model so that they can actually look at it and think, well, what they've got this other working model that's actually on Earth, while the working model that's in space is in space. So they're building 2 at the same time. I just, oh wow, I don't know.
I guess that makes sense though. So they can kind of take it apart and really dig into it.
It does. Now I want to ask actually about the character real quick. Don Scribner plays this character that's really clever. Comes in near the end of the movie. He seemed like a cool guy to work with. I love that character too. I love that he was given the screen time. A lot of times a side character like that would just sort of come in and deliver some information and be gone. He's part of it. I guess just want to say Don Scribner, I just want to do a little shout out to him because I thought he did great.
Yeah, Don is awesome. He's the most like just zen, laid back, like the coolest guy. Had with him that was like really long page. We actually, some of the scenes are a little bit shorter in the movie than they were in the script, but he had just a page and a half of dialogue to go through. And it was, and that character I think is really interesting because that's kind of like through the movie as it goes, he becomes the point of interest that the main character's looking for, but also this agency that ends up following our lead character. I always knew that the movie would lead into that direction with a character like that. And Don was a perfect for that role. He was nothing but a pleasure to work with.
He nailed it. I love side characters like that. Populate your world building with all sorts of just interesting other characters, which shows like a rich history. This isn't just a story of what is happening to the lead character. This is something that's spanned decades, and there's a lot of layers and things that are revealed. So again, I'm dancing around the story, but I do want to ask your advice to filmmakers that want to at least include some big effect shots in their movies. And what's funny is I've seen other filmmakers that actually have big budget to work with and the effects don't look great. And I always just think, is it the effects crew is overtaxed? Is it a taste thing? Because I do know, having had limited experience in special effects, is that really like your supervision of the effects is really critical. But what advice would you give to indie filmmakers who really want to give that big budget feel as you have achieved, but really are just lacking in huge funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that makes the difference between like a good visual effect shot and a bad visual effect shot, I really think is just time. I think that, when there's not a lot of money, it's not necessarily that they're hiring bad artists or that people that aren't very good are working on them. It's usually that whoever's working on them just doesn't have a lot of time. And with, that was one of the great things about being so low budget, is that there's so much more creative freedom and flexibility. And like, we don't have, like, when we started shooting, we didn't have like a theatrical release date announced to the public that we had to hit. And, so we had flexibility and leeway within that. And to people that want to be able to put visual effects in their movie and have them at a high degree, I would say, I mean, if they have a lot of experience doing it, that's good. But I would just say, try to, you always want to be ambitious with what you're doing, but you don't want to reach too far to where you can't hit the mark on a quality level. Cause it's like, at the end of the day, like, the best visual effects movie out there from the biggest studio that's the benchmark. And even if you're on a low budget, like, you should really still be competing with that. So I think maybe limiting what you're doing with it, like, not like I was talking about with invisible visual effects versus like visual effects that that you can obviously see on screen, stuff that I think just trying to limit how many you put in. And I think about like the 2014, the Godzilla movie. Like, you don't really even see the creature for that much in the movie. It's more toward the end, but it's not, the whole movie isn't just saturated with Godzilla walking around. Like, they're very sparse with what they're doing and being minimal with it.
I think that's actually, you just really revealed what's the secret of a good special effect. And a lot of times it's how you use it. First of all, it's that deadline. I love that. I think John Carpenter even was complaining about that. The reason that the bigger budget movies are not as successful these days is, there's a release date before a script is done, which is, yeah. But I think knowing when to cut away, and sometimes less is more. If you really look at the original Star Wars, I'm talking about the despecialized edition, not the special edition, the despecialized edition, just look that up. I'm not saying anything. There's a despecialized edition of Star Wars that exists, as it was originally released in 1935 and in 1977. Anyways, so a lot of that movie was saved from just knowing when to cut. I mean, Marcia Lucas was just cutting things down so that you barely show an effect. Your mind fills in the details. And I think also sound. That's the thing where I was so happy, like, that you spent so much time on the sound for this film. Though that to me just fills in blanks and things you're not showing. It extends a special effect into a scene because you're not seeing the thing, but you're hearing the thing. So I think it's underestimated how important sound design is, especially to a film with special effects.
Yeah, we had some scenes where that's the other thing, is like being able to be flexible and figure out ways to be able to improvise, because there are certain scenes that we had in the script that we would kind of pare down a little bit, just because, like, as you're going, you're also trying to make it for a budget. So, there's like a certain scene, and you have to really just ask yourself scene by scene, like, what is the purpose of this scene and what needs to get across in this scene? And there's usually some kind of story element or maybe some kind of character development moment. And you just got to make sure that you capture that. But everything else, there's scenes where we literally didn't show it, and we stayed with the point of view from the character and just added in what he's seeing. Like the first after he sees the meteor and he like runs down this embankment and he's just looking up the hill and he can hear law enforcement coming and like closing down the road, but you don't really see much of it. And so that was something that in the script we saw a lot more of that scene, but yeah, I think just paring it down and knowing what you need to have come across and what you don't need to show is important for sure.
I just think it's critical, and it really helped you build what from where I sit and just watching the movie, it's just a it feels like a big budget movie.
Well,
I'm a little disappointed I had to watch it on my TV. I feel like this movie would play really well in a theater too.
Yeah, the really cool thing about it is our sound mix was done by Skywalker Sound. So when you hear it in a theater, like I remember going in there for the first few days of the mix, and our mixer Brandon is like turning up some of the bass that happens. There's like our opening scene is a pretty cool scene, and there's a lot of bass going on. And when you hear it in a theater, like I got to listen to it in the Stag Theater, which has like one of the best sound systems in the world. And it's so crazy. Sound is so important. It's so important in movies, and you really get that when you're watching it in a theater. So yeah, I mean, we were actually had a limited theatrical release, but with everything going on, it's on by May 15th, it doesn't look like the theaters are going to be open. So
yeah, well,
people will get to see it from their home, but maybe one day it'll see a theater.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is a great time for independent film. The playing field is leveled. You know, your film comes out on iTunes or Vudu or whatnot. It's on a level playing field with all the other major releases that are coming out. I think this is just such a great time for indie movies to discover them and kind of just like, just sort of, I feel like, I love the big sort of dumb summer movies and the studio movies. I feel like I feel the same way about fast food. I love it while I'm eating it. It's great. But after a while, you kind of want something that's a little bit more substance. And that's what I think that indie films provide. And you did a fantastic job on the movie. So
thanks.
Yeah. Eric Demeusy, thank you so much for talking to us on the podcast. Any final words, to the Film Threat audience who should all be checking out Proximity when it comes out May 15th?
It comes out May 15th. And I really hope that it can inspire other, independent filmmakers, because, before making this movie, it's like, I felt like I was at a roadblock as well. And being able to find the project that you really want to go out and make, and something that you don't need permission to go shoot, and you can do it for a really low budget, and just try to figure out what resources you have available to you and try to use those to your advantage and go make the thing that you really want to make.
Well, we have time now. We're all in lockdown. We're in quarantine. I think life is going to be different. I think we're kind of living in an indie sci-fi movie right now. I mean, if you think about it, it's very all these movies predicted it. I was watching the opening sequence. You should do yourself a favor. Look at the opening sequence of the movie Omega Man with Charlton Heston.
Okay.
Somewhere in there, there's like this. It's a flashback to like when this pandemic started that changed the world, and it feels like it just could have been made now. It's wow! Crazy. So there's my little plug there. Eric, thank you so much. Everyone, check out Proximity and follow us on Film Threat. We're Film Threat on everything: Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And thank you so much, Eric. Congrats again on the film, and I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see what you do next. Just thanks again,
Chris. Thank you.
Take care.
Talking to you. All right. Bye.